right, y'all. What's up? So we're gonna talk about something a little taboo today. Anybody who knows me, they know that. Well, not anybody who knows me, but if y'all been watching me, then y'all can probably infer that I'm somebody who does a lot of research on topics pertaining to the African diaspora or the Black community, as some would say. Um, but more so within my own culture, within the African American community and culture. So one of the things I feel like is not talked about enough because it is taboo, and it's like people probably like, why would you even want to talk about it? But I just think it's so interesting, and that is voodoo and hoodoo in the African American community. That is, those are voodoo is a religion, and hoodoo is a spiritual system. I've seen some people say that hoodoo is a religion, but based on my research, it's more so about spirituality than it is about a structured like religion type of thing like voodoo is. But both of these things came into fruition during the slavery era when a bunch of Africans were transported from Africa to various places in the Western world, I would say. But for the United States of America, Hoodoo and Voodoo are the two religions that still kind of draw from our, I guess you could say, our original ancestral spirituality systems, if that makes sense to y'all. So I wanted to talk about it. First and foremost, let me just say that I am a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ. I've accepted Jesus Christ into my life. I am a firm believer in God. My relationship with God is the most important thing to me. But I always tell people that I'm more spiritual than I am religious. And I've always felt this way because I feel like, my connection with God and spirituality, it goes beyond like what you would see in church and what you feel when you go to church. I still think that's an important thing, but I can't cap, like I don't really go to church like that, like I used to when I was younger, or you know what I'm saying, like now that I'm an adult, I don't really go to church like that. I read the Bible. I do, not consistently or anything, but I do use the Bible. I read the Bible, and things like that. So I am a Christian. However, I've always felt like, and how can I say this without sounding controversial? I always felt like what we know as Christianity and religion is just a very small portion of what it actually is. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like that's just what we know as humans in flesh, but I feel like it's so much more that goes beyond that. And I've always felt like our relationships with the people who came before us is something that is important. And a lot of the things that, not a lot of the things, but some of the things that I believe are contradictory to my religion. So that's why I'm getting on here, because I kind of wanted to see, like, is it just me that thinks like this? I pray on this all the time, and I don't feel like I'm feeling anything wrong when I believe these things or talk about these things. But I know my community, I know my culture, and I know what's looked down upon and what's considered taboo. And this is one of those things. I don't practice voodoo or hoodoo or anything like that, but I really do value ancestral connections and things like that. So I do talk to, as much as I pray to God and I pray to Jesus and things like that, I do find myself talking to the people who came before me, people who passed away that I know, and even the ones that I don't know. Like, I feel like they play a role in my protection and all the good things that have happened to me in life. I feel like it has to be somebody else, because there's been times in my life where maybe I wasn't as faithful to God as I should have been, and still I was looked out for. Still I had miracles coming to my life, and I know that ultimately it is God doing this. But there's just a belief in my mind that people who came before me are still looking after me and still putting in a word for me and still protecting me. So, that's contradictory, because I think in Christianity it's believed that, if you were faithful to God and you're a Christian, you were a Christian while you were alive, then once you pass away, you have no more connection with, this world. You know what I'm saying? That's the belief in Christianity. You're going to heaven. You're going to be with God. So there's no way that you can be talking to people or have your spirit around or stuff like that. If you were a Christian, that's what they say. But I don't necessarily. I believe that to a certain extent, but I've had experiences in my life where it just doesn't feel like that's the end all to be all. So as far as hoodoo and voodoo and stuff like that, so these are spiritual practices that are taboo in our community because of, I guess you could say, the abuse of it back in the day. Like, with everything, there's a good part of it and there's a bad part of it. The bad part of it overshadowed the good parts. And so ultimately it just became something that was like, no, we're not messing with that. And everybody of African descent was not a follower of voodoo or nothing like that. I don't want to say that, but it's something that was well known within the black community. It's something that everybody was familiar with. Now, not so much. It's kind of like, it's vague. People hear the word and they think of like voodoo dolls and stuff like that, and a lot of people don't even know what hoodoo is. Like hoodoo with an H, they don't know what that is. Or conjure, root work and stuff like that, they don't know about terms like that. So we've kind of become disconnected from it as a community, but I know it still exists, and a lot of the people have gone underground with it because, like I said, they don't want to be persecuted for their beliefs and things like that. So but I really don't know what exactly I wanted to say about this topic, but I just felt like, I don't know, I wanted to know if anybody else out there felt the same way about things like that. Like, what are some of the things that you know about, our spiritual practices as black people that weren't taught to us by Europeans? Not to say that Christianity is completely a European concept or things like that, because we know that that's not true at all. But during slavery, they were trying to teach slaves how to be obedient, so they used Christianity as a tool. So that's why Christianity gets that rep of like, oh, it's a slave religion and things like that. But things God have done for me in my life, I just know there's a God and there's a Christ. That's just my belief. So I don't think it's like the white man's religion or anything like that. However, I'm not naive to think that, all my ancestors, when they came over here, they were already Christians or things like that. Like, for the most part, they practice their indigenous religions and things like that. And a lot of them practice Islam. So it's like, I'm a Christian now, but I have a respect for those systems because I believe it's a part of who we all are at the core. They use those things to survive through all of the horrors that is slavery. So I will always have respect for it. I remember, like, when I first just started researching and getting into it and stuff like that, I remember seeing, I don't know if y'all know the singer Summer Walker, but she always posts like crystals and things like that. And I remember going on Instagram and being like, I said something smart. Like, I made a post like something smart, like how people are kind of like witches or something to the effect of that. Because I ain't gonna lie, she still, in my opinion, she overdo it with like posting the altars and stuff like that. But I didn't understand the background of certain things, crystals and sage and stuff like that. Because me, all I need is a Bible, maybe some candles or something, and my hands and feet to get on my knees and pray. I don't need no crystals or sage or nothing like that. But as I'm doing my research and stuff, and I'm learning more about the practices that are indigenous to my culture, then I have researched and gotten more interested into it. But me personally, I just don't I don't have to have those things. But when I first saw them, I was like, what is she doing? Like, she just thinks she's so above everybody and so knowledgeable. Like, I was basically trying to say that what she was doing was wicked and stuff like that. And I would never forget, y'all. I can't remember if it was the same night or like a week later. Like, I found myself going to sleep or whatever, and then I just woke up, but I wasn't up. Like, I swear I was like in this period of like, I forget what you call it. I learned it in one of my classes about like what that period of sleep is, where it's like you not really sleep, like you sleep but you're not really sleep or whatever like that. I remember that, and it was just like something came to me, and I felt it like a presence, and it was just like telling me like, don't condemn the practices of people. Like, that's what it told me. Like, don't condemn that type of expression in spirituality and religion. And I felt like that happened to me because somewhere along the line my ancestors might have used those practices that I was kind of throwing shade at. So I never forget that. And it wasn't a scary presence. It wasn't like I feel like I was gonna be harmed or anything like that, but it was definitely like, you need to watch what you're saying about how people choose to talk to God and how they choose to tap into their spirituality. Like, a lot of times, like I said, in our community, we look at things and we don't know the history on it, we don't know the background, we automatically assume something is demonic, something is evil. Some things are, but some things aren't. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that those things are necessarily demonic, but I do think that people use them for demonic things, and that's the whole controversy around it. But I'll never forget that moment that I felt, because it was just like, that completely changed everything for me. Like, I began to become more of an open person when it came. I was already open. Like, I always knew, like, because I've seen like spirits and stuff like that. So I was always aware of things beyond what we know and what we talk about. But when I seen them crystals and stuff, I'm like, girl, what are you doing? Like, you extra. Like, are you worshiping something? Like, what are you doing? Like, anybody who got like older parents, older grandparents and stuff, like, if they see like an altar or something like that, they're gonna be like, what in the demon is this? So I basically, I had that same energy, but I don't anymore. I understand, people do bad things in life, and people do good. So it's like, you can't just look at something and think that's automatically bad, especially when you do the research and you understand how it is connected to who you are. So that's what I wanted to talk about. My family is from Louisiana. In Louisiana, Voodoo is an actual religion. Like, it's been a religion since we arrived on the soil. So when I say it's a religion, I mean, like, there's orishas and there's different gods and goddesses and stuff that people pray to and stuff like that, based off of the African religion called Voodoo. So that's how it got its name or whatever. So it's an actual religion. People use it to heal. People use it to connect and tap into into the spiritual world. People use it to do bad. They use it to put the root on people. They use it to F up people's lives. So it's really an interesting topic. I remember I was talking to my dad about it, and I don't even know how we got on the conversation, but we were just talking about like how prevalent it is in the state of Louisiana, because y'all have to remember that Louisiana was a French colony before it became a part of the United States of America. So being under the French colonial rule was different than being under like the Anglo-American rule during slavery. So the slaves got to kind of do a little bit more. I would say, I won't act like it's just a free land or something like that, but they did get to practice a little bit more and do a little bit more under the French colonial rule. And so that's why I think like the way people talk, the way people dance, the food that we eat in Louisiana is different from other parts of the world, other parts of the country, I should say. And you know, the Geechee people are like that too. Like in South Carolina, like in Georgia, like they had different experiences, so they talk different, they eat different foods than, you know, the greater African American community. You know what I'm saying? So that's one thing I remember. Me and my dad was talking about one day, and I remember he said something. He was like, it had something to do with the water, and I remember asking him like, "What you mean the water?" He was like, "I don't know. I just think, you know, voodoo had something to do with the water or something like that." I didn't, I didn't get him to elaborate on it too much because I was just like, okay, I don't know what he's talking about. But I recently read a book, and I got to this point, and they was talking to like a former slave and stuff like that, and this after slavery, he went to go live on like live in a house like that was on the edge of a swamp or whatever, on the swamp or like the Mississippi River or something like that. And he was just talking about, you know, the water and spirits and stuff like that. So there is a connection between not just voodoo or hoodoo, but just African American spirituality and water in general. But it's more so like the water, the bodies of water that we had access to, which is swamps and bayous and stuff like that. So there is a connection because they would go to these places that were kind of like in the woods and stuff like that, and they practice their way of practicing Christianity, or even going back to their own African indigenous religions. So that's something that I have learned, you know, as I've continued to research different things and stuff like that. So, but you know, I just always thought like, man, like there's so much that we don't really talk about, and it's starting to, like, I guess you could say, fade away. And I see now, if you look up like hoodoo and voodoo on YouTube, like, you gonna see a bunch of white people like talking about the stuff, and I just think that's so backwards. And I don't see how you'll look in the comments and you'll see black people asking them questions and stuff like that, and you know, I just don't see how anybody would trust you know, even if they read all the books written by black people and talked to all the black people in the world, like, how could you trust them to tell you how to practice a religion that was created and passed down by your ancestors? Like, it don't even make sense. Why? Because white people have their own indigenous religions, like before Christianity and stuff like that. So I never understood why they would want to practice hoodoo and voodoo and stuff like that. But that's a whole new story. So I don't even know what was my purpose of making this video, but I just thought it was something interesting. Let me know your thoughts below. Like, you know, what are your experiences with like hoodoo and voodoo, and you know, any type of indigenous practice, any type of African practices, African inspired practices, I should say, because it's not really directly African, but you know, it definitely pulls from that part of our heritage. I know in other parts of the world where slaves were taken, like the Caribbean, they have their own forms of spirituality. Like in Jamaica, they have Obia. I think Jamaica and Trinidad have Obia. In Haiti, they have Voodoo, which is, people think it's the same as Louisiana Voodoo because of that connection, but it's not the same. But they have similarities. Like it comes from the same origin, obviously. What else? It's another one. Oh man, I can't think. But in Cuba they have, I think, Santeria or something like that. But you know, because of all the bad stuff that happens with these type of spiritual practices, a lot of people stray away from talking about it and stuff like that. But you know, I really just think it's something interesting that should be discussed in our communities, because if you think about it, like these are tools that were used to survive the horrors of slavery, and we go through a lot of stuff in our present day, but we don't go through nothing like what our ancestors went through. So I think it would be valuable for people to at least learn about it. I'm not saying we gotta practice, because I don't practice or whatever, but I learn about it, I respect it, and you know, I'm interested in collecting those stories from our elders to, you know, to pass the stories on and to understand myself better and understand my culture better, you know. So that's just all I wanted to say on that subject. So leave a comment, y'all. Just let me know, like, what are your thoughts? What do you know about it? Do you think it's demonic? Are you a Christian? You know, what are your spiritual practices? what do you know about things like that? You know, I love to have the dialogue. I'd love to talk to y'all about it. So just leave a comment below and we could chit chat on it. And yeah, that's just all I wanted to say. Thank y'all so much for watching, and see y'all in the next video.